The Federal Reserve is not there for you and for me. The Federal Reserve is there for one reason. The Federal Reserve has one customer and one customer only, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let them fool you. The banks are the only customer of the Federal Reserve. Hello, YouTubers. Alaska Prepper here. I came across this article and it kind of, for a lack of better terms, it kind of ticked me off because most people take what the government tells them as fact and as gospel. They'll say, oh, those numbers that the government's giving us, it's good because the government's doing it. They know better. They know better than we do. Ladies and gentlemen, do your own research. Look into things. Think for yourselves. Let's get into this article because, like I said, it really bothered me that they just put this right out there in our faces and expect us to believe it. It says here, low-income households crushed by the crises, by this medical crisis, inflation shock. Really? So right now, everything is being blamed on this medical crisis. Everything, if it's the stock market, why isn't the stock market being blamed on this medical crisis? The stock market is skyrocketing while everything else is bottoming. But everything else is being blamed on this. It seems like our lives are now being dictated on this one thing. And our government is milking it as much as they can. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the new boogeyman. I've come to the conclusion, and I hope I'm wrong, that this will be with us for years. This little crisis that we've been going through, and I don't mean to call it little in a way that demeans the people that have lost their lives because of it. But when you compare it to the world, it's not huge, okay? So anyone whose lives have been affected by this in a negative way, meaning that you got ill or sick, it's not little in that way. But it is little when compared to what our government is doing in order to capitalize on what has occurred and is occurring. Let me start reading here. It says, as the Fed continues to flood the system with money, insisting that inflation is merely a boogeyman, and it is doing everything in its power to support the middle class, Bloomberg has found that inflation due to this health crisis is real and is disproportionately hammering poor households. Well, why is it hammering poor households, ladies and gentlemen? That is the question. The question is, why is inflation hammering poor households? Well, let's check it out. Due to higher grocery and housing costs for the bare necessities during the lockdown, the study found that the bottom 10% of households by income currently face inflation of 1.5%, while those at the top 10% face 1%. Meanwhile, the official overall average in May was 0.01%. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the things about this article that ticks me off. Do you really believe that inflation's 1.5%? I mean, reading it at face value, you can come to the conclusion in saying that inflation for the lower 10% of households is 50% higher than that of the higher 10% of households. So that's pretty bad in itself. But do you really believe, when you look around, when you go shopping, do you really believe that inflation is only 1.5%? And look, I don't even bother looking at any of these charts because they make these charts up. They make up these numbers in order to pacify the uninformed. That's why I'm such a big proponent of do your research, read between the lines. According to the report, the difference is primarily due to changes in consumption habits during the health crisis, as households have been forced to buy more food which has shot up in price, while spending less on recreational activities and transportation. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, they're going to blame everything on this health crisis. They're going to blame everything they possibly can on this health crisis. I forgot the name of the guy who said it, but he's in the government now, and I think he's the mayor of Chicago. But he says, never let a good crisis go to waste. Never let a good crisis go to waste for who? That's the question. Never let a good crisis go to waste, but for who? In a period of protest and increasing anger about inequality, the differential inflation rate experienced by low and high income households is a concern. Taken together with concerns about central banks bailing out investors ahead of firms and workers, and the benefits rich, asset-owning households gain from quantitative easing, it adds to the sense that central banks are unintentional contributors to the problem of inequality. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the part of this article that ticked me off the most. It says, the central banks are unintentionally contributing to the problems of inequality. Ladies and gentlemen, that couldn't be farther from the truth. It is primarily because of the central banks that there is a problem with inequality. It is primarily because of the central banks. And I'm going to show you guys how here in a second. Then it says, meanwhile, adding insult to injury, CNN points out that blue-collar workers are more likely to contract this health crisis. They're more likely to contract this disease. Adding, if you can't work remotely and you haven't been laid off, chances are you're headed into work and putting yourself at risk every day. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, they are going to milk this. This health crisis is the new boogeyman. This will be around with us for years. They will continue to push this narrative until it has been milked dry. Remember the narrative they were pushing prior to this? You know, the T word? The T word is everywhere. We have to get TSA in airports because of the T word. Meanwhile, when an exercise was conducted to see how efficient the TSA was, the TSA failed at pointing out or identifying hazardous materials crossing through their lines or their checkpoints 95% of the time. 95% of the time they failed. Well, now that that narrative has been played out, and now that they've milked the T-word narrative, where people just don't care about it anymore, they had to find something else. And this is what they're going to use, in my opinion, to complete disseminating the middle and lower class. I've said it in the past. What they are making is a two-class system, a class of the haves, a class of the have-nots. Ladies and gentlemen, they are taking away our freedom by taking away our wealth. Think about that. They are taking away our freedom by taking away our wealth. Ladies and gentlemen, the less that your money is worth and the more that things that you need to live cost, the less freedom you have, because the more you have to work in order to afford to only live. I want to show you something. I just went on Google and I put in, why are the prices of everything going up? And in this case, they're talking about India. However, it is relevant to the U.S. as well as to any other country, because almost every country is doing this. I'll say almost every government is doing this. All right, the country are the people. The government are the ones that are put in place to ensure that the people are allowed to be free and to produce and to live. Why are prices of everything going up? It is because our government is creating more and more monetary notes and coins day after day. If our government would not have done that, then if the rate of any one good or item have risen, then automatically the rates of other goods would have fallen down. But here the prices of all goods are rising at the same time. What do they mean? They mean by saying this that the more money that there is in circulation, the more that things are going to cost, because there's more money chasing the same amount of goods. Now, if the government wouldn't print money and the money in circulation was always steady according to the population, then whenever a good goes up because there's more demand for that good, then the price of other goods would go down because there's less money chasing those goods, because the other monies are chasing the goods that are going up. It would just be a supply and demand issue as far as prices go up and down. But this is what's happening now, ladies and gentlemen, is that everything is going up. Some things are going up higher than others because we still have that, supply and demand, factored into the economy. It's still there. But everything else is also going up. So there are some things that are increasing in price really fast, but everything else is increasing in price slowly. Maybe 1%, maybe 0.5%, maybe a penny here, a penny there. I bring you back to that can of corn or that can of green beans that I told you that just about a year and a half or so ago was 48 cents and now it's 91 cents. I want to show you something real quick. I went ahead and took a look at what the price of oil is today and what it was at the highest time in history when oil was the highest. Right? If you take a look over here where it says barrel oil in 1980. In 1980, this is the highest price that oil ever achieved. It was $148.93 per barrel in 1980. Today, oil is around $42. Okay, it's a liquid price. So I saw that WTI was like around $41, and then I saw that crude was around $43. So I say average it out around $42 a barrel is today. So today, a barrel of oil costs 28% of what it cost in 1980. Let that sink in, ladies and gentlemen. It's important that you understand this. Today, a barrel of oil costs roughly 1/4 of what it cost in 1980, 40 years ago. Look at gasoline. In 1980, when oil was at the highest that it had ever been in history, a gallon of gasoline was averaging $2.95 in the United States. Today, when oil is at a very low price, I won't say at the lowest it's ever been, because the lowest it's ever been was negative $41 when they were giving it away in the month of May. But today, when oil is at about 1/4 of what it used to be, the price of gasoline today is $2.18 averaged out in the U.S. So today's gasoline costs about 74% of what it did in 1980, while oil only costs 28% of what it did in 1980. So we're paying roughly 2.5 to 3 times more for gas today than what we used to pay back in 1980. That's how you have to look at it. We're paying more for gasoline today than what we did in 1980. Because look at the difference in the price of oil. And look at the difference in the price of gas between today and then. These are the questions that you want to ask yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Why is this happening? Why? Because the Federal Reserve, ladies and gentlemen, and I know some people will disagree with me, and that's fine. Some people think that we need the Federal Reserve. Who's going to handle the financial system if we don't have the Federal Reserve? I don't know. I mean, the financial system is just an in and out, right? If you have $10 in your pocket and you take that money out of your pocket and you give it to someone for a box of Twinkies, now they have the $10 and you have the box of Twinkies. How difficult can it be? The reason they've made it so complicated is because it's the easiest way for them to steal your wealth. ladies and gentlemen. It is the easiest way for them to take your wealth and transfer it to someone else. And let me show you exactly what I mean by this. You know how here in the last month or so, they've been bailing out all these big companies and everything? Well, check this out. In the last 10 years, okay, in the last 10 years, these 5 big airlines in the last 10 years have spent just shy of $35 billion. Incredible. Just shy of $35 billion on stock buybacks. For those of you that don't know what stock buybacks are, let me tell you real quick. A stock buyback is when a company takes its profits or takes money that it has that's liquid. Let's say they have $1 billion. Let's say in this case, Alaska Air Group, $1.5 billion or $1.6 billion in the last 10 years in stock buybacks. When they have this money that's liquid money that's sitting in their account, they take that money and they buy back their own stocks. So they are taking stocks out of the market by buying it back for themselves, in turn producing artificial demand for that stock. So when there are less stocks in the market to buy, the price of the stocks go up. And then what do they do when the price of the stocks go up? Everyone who owns that stock makes more money. Who are the primary beneficiaries of stock buybacks? Well, ladies and gentlemen, your CEOs, your high executives get paid most of their income in stocks. Why? Because they have to pay less taxes on capital gains than they do on income. So when you hear all of these big CEOs getting a whole bunch of stocks, that's mainly how they get paid, because they get to pay less taxes on capital income than they do on actual income. I'm sorry, on capital gains than they do on actual income. So they get primarily paid in stocks. And when there's stock buybacks, the stocks that these people are holding, that these CEOs, these CFOs, these high executives in these companies, they're holding these stocks at a higher price because they're ordering their stock to be bought back. And then what happens whenever there's a scandal? The CEO or whatever, the president, whoever it is in that company, they leave. And what is it called? It's called a golden parachute. Because not only do they get their stocks and get to sell them at a premium, but they also get a whole bunch of money for exiting that company before their contract was due to expire. These guys, ladies and gentlemen, not just the airlines, this is just an example. These guys are the ones that the wealth is being transferred to. It's not just airlines. They did it this time around to cruise ships. They did it with banks. Banks are the ones that get it most of the time. The Federal Reserve is not there for you and for me. The Federal Reserve is there for one reason. The Federal Reserve has one customer and one customer only, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let them fool you. The banks are the only customer of the Federal Reserve. They only care about the banks. And the banks only care about making money at your behest, at your expense. So check this out. $36 billion they spent in the last 10 years buying back their own stocks. And now that they spent all this money buying back their own stocks, now they're in dire straits and they're saying, please give me more money. Please give me money. I need money, or else I'm going to go bankrupt, and all of the employees are going to lose their job and the world is going to come to an end. Ladies and gentlemen, when a company goes bankrupt, the planes are still going to be there. If Delta Airlines goes bankrupt, the planes aren't going to disappear. All right? All of the equipment is not going to disappear. The airport is not going to disappear. Everything is going to be there the day after they go bankrupt. What happens is the people that gambled on these companies, who didn't do their own research to see where these companies were in their finances, those are the people that will lose the money. Who are those people primarily? You guessed it. The people that are sitting at the top. They're the ones that get paid in stocks. So now this time around, that for the past 10 years, they've spent $36 billion buying back their own stocks. And now that they're failing, so what happens now? Just check it out. crippled airline industry to get $25 billion bailout, right, as part of this health crisis thing. And they'll use this health crisis thing to give money to everyone that they want to give money to, but not to you and not to me, ladies and gentlemen, because we are the ones that create the wealth that they take away. Do your research, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I can see with my eyes that what they're doing is dismantling the middle class and the lower class, stealing your wealth and the wealth of the future generations. I hope you got something out of this. Thank you very much for hanging in there if you're still here. I hope you guys had a great weekend, and I hope that you have a good week ahead. Remember to be good to each other, ladies and gentlemen. Help each other, because when good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper. I'm out.